Welcome to Speaking of Our Words, a production of the Kenosha Writers Guild. We will be bringing you in this format a series of videos to allow you, the viewer, the opportunity to experience the oral reading of the work of local writers, a rare opportunity. Additionally, for your enjoyment and to give you insight into their creative process, we will interview the writers right here about their work. I'm Marshall Smith, your host. I'm a published poet and studied creative writing in the MFA program at the University of Iowa Writers Workshop. Today we have something a little bit different. Samantha Jacquest, owner of Blue House Books, will share some of her work with us and talk about her company. Sam, a hearty welcome. Thank you for coming. So this is our first opportunity to interview a bookstore owner, yes. So I'm excited about that. And the very first question I have almost seems obvious, but how did you come up with the name Blue House Books?
I love talking about that. So when I first came up with this idea of starting a bookstore, the name was very important to me, as it should be, and I was really struggling. At first I called it The Gathering Place because I thought that was kind of a good general term to make people feel welcome, and it just sounded kind of cool, but I wasn't passionate about it, so I kept thinking, and so I thought, okay, what do I want the vibe of my company to be? Not even just the store, but the whole company. And I thought I wanted to be a place where everyone feels welcome, where everyone feels at home, where it's a diverse set of people who are here to enjoy themselves and maybe learn something. And I immediately actually thought of my parents' house. So Blue House Books is actually named after the blue house that I grew up in.
Oh, that's quaint. That's nice.
Yeah, my parents created such a great home for us. It was the place where our family and friends gathered whenever possible. And my nephew, who is now 17, when he was really young, he used to call it his blue house. So that's where it came from.
Very nice, very nice. I like that story a lot. So tell us about your startup company, Blue House Books. How did the idea come to you, and how long ago, and just a little bit about that?
So it started when I got back to Kenosha after studying abroad for a year in England, where I got my master's in book publishing. And my idea initially was to get up and move to Boston right away and, have a big city life career and everything, but I realized I really missed my family, and I had just gotten a dog, and I didn't want to shove him in a little tiny apartment. So I kind of got more and more comfortable with the idea of staying in Kenosha. I also hadn't lived in Kenosha for about 5 years since high school, and I realized that I love this city so much more as an adult than I ever did. The downtown area is getting so much nicer. There's so much more opportunity in this area. So then I made the decision to stay, but there just isn't many job opportunities in the area for what I want to do. So I decided to make one. And I wanted to go full force and make the full bookstore right away and take out a huge fat business loan. And a few friends kind of cautioned me to slow down a little. And a friend sent me a link to people who were doing similar things, kind of starting a little bit slower with lower overhead costs, starting as a pop-up. Which is what Blue House Books is right now, is a pop-up bookstore. So I go to community events. I operate primarily out of Kenosha Creative Space, out of their gallery space and during their community events. And I kind of set up vendor style, and I sell books, primarily new, with some used ones as well, and with so many more goals for the future. But that's how I'm operating at the moment, with hopefully a full store opening within a year.
Okay, so interestingly, you then set up a sort of a vendor stand at various events and sell books. And how do you select your books?
So there's kind of 3 different routes I take. There's the obvious bestsellers. When Michelle Obama's book came out, I stocked it right away. I sell out of it every time I stock it. No matter your political beliefs, that's just a smart business decision. It was the best-selling book of 2018. So there's that route. There are trends in the publishing industry. I'm trained to do the research on that, what's selling well. But one of my favorite ways to select my books is recommendations, both my own to myself. I sell best what I like because I can recommend it, but also from my customers and from my loyal readers who love talking to me about what they like to read. So I love getting recommendations from them because it's what people are really actually reading and not just every New York Times bestseller.
Do you get repeat customers?
Oh my goodness, yes. I have actually made some really great friends during this process, so much so to the point that I started a book club. And there's always kind of a core, I think it's like 7 of us that are there every single week, or month, I'm sorry. And they are just the best, and they are always asking me what I have that's new, which is almost a lot of pressure because I want to make sure I have something good for them every time. But yeah, I get a lot of repeat customers, and even a few that I don't know their names, but I recognize them because they see my Facebook events or they see my sign in the creative space window that I'm having an event that day, and they come in just to see me. So it's really, really great. There's a couple teenagers actually that always come with their parents. So that's always really great to see. So definitely a good amount of repeat customers. Mm-hmm.
I get a lot of enthusiasm from you when I'm talking to you, and I imagine that goes a long distance in establishing the relationships you have to develop repeat customers, which is essential to your growth.
Yes,
correct?
Absolutely. I'm a customer service oriented person. Another reason that I didn't want to just jump straight into a publishing career is I didn't want to just sit in an office. I've worked retail and in restaurants since I was 14 years old, and I love it. I love customer service and really interacting with people and meeting new people. And that's why a big part of my business is also events. It's not just standing there selling books, it's hosting events. I had in March, International Women's Day event. It was amazing. I met so many people that day. I scheduled a musician, a panel discussion, a couple local authors did readings. And so, yeah, that is a big part of what carries my business is the fact that I'm so dedicated to the customer and I just enjoy them. Mm-hmm.
Good, good. So give us an example, if you will, about of extensive customer service, the way you think about customer service. What does that mean? It means different things to different people.
Yeah, definitely. It's putting the effort in for what you think the customer will enjoy, even if that means making a few mistakes along the way and learning from it. When I first started doing the pop-ups and I first started ordering new books, I would order like 5 to 10 at a time because I was like, oh, they're gonna love this one, I have to have it in stock. And for some of those titles, I still have 8 of them 2 years later. So, it's making mistakes and being okay with that and learning as you grow. And it's also putting in the effort behind the scenes. So an example of that is around Valentine's Day, I did blind date with a book. So what I do is I wrap up books. I only write a vague description on the wrapping paper and a price, and the customer, the reader, takes a chance and goes on a blind date with a book. And that took a lot of man hours to write up the descriptions, because it can't just be the description on the back, that's too obvious. To write up the descriptions, to wrap up the books. My roommate helped me, my sister helped me. We were rushing right before the event started to get the last few books wrapped up, but people loved it. A couple of those teenagers who are now repeat customers, they came in for the first time during that event, and they were so excited about the books that they got. One girl and her dad actually left the store, came back because she was so excited about the first book she got, she wanted to get another. So it's definitely putting in that effort behind the scenes. And they may never know about it, but as long as they're happy.
Well, that's ingenious. Mm-hmm. That is. I like the metaphor, blind date with a book.
Yeah. I will admit it's not a super original idea, but it's primarily done in libraries because there's not really a risk of paying for the book. But bookstore, I don't know a lot of bookstores that do it because they don't think people are willing to do it. But people were really willing to spend some money on something that they didn't actually know what they were buying. And I was really surprised. Only one person tore the book up right away in front of me at the checkout, whereas everyone else was patient and waited till they left the store. I wouldn't have been able to do that.
Too much curiosity.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. You considered, after the London experience, coming back, going to Boston, a large city, and there the economic atmosphere would be tremendously different. Your competition would be tremendously different. You decided on Kenosha, and you fit here well. So how do you see Blue House Books fitting into the local communities in the area of Kenosha and maybe even Racine?
Yeah, well, the way I see it, downtown is missing one thing, and it's a bookstore. We have great restaurants, great boutique-style stores, bars, and it's missing a bookstore. I think that's a really key factor in any downtown area. There are several galleries that promote all different forms of art, and this is kind of the only art form that is not represented, aside from, of course, the library. But yeah, I think this is definitely what our downtown area is missing, which is where will definitely be putting the store. It's kind of a must that it needs to go downtown, yeah. And like you said, even Racine, so Racine does have Barnes & Noble, but Barnes & Noble actually isn't doing quite as well as it used to. And I will admit, I did just learn that a book warehouse of some sort store opened up in the outlet mall. Not that I don't wish them well, but
Well, I believe from what I've read that model is quite a lot different than yours will be.
Okay, well that's good to know. And at least it's not right in the community where I was aiming for.
Right. Well, your model, well, actually I was going to ask you about your permanent location. You've already answered that. So definitely downtown
Has
Kenosha.
to be downtown. Yep, that's the right community
that's
for
good
it.
to hear. That's great to hear. I don't know if that's more or less expensive than being somewhere else, but that's where you ideally wish to be. That's great.
Absolutely.
That's great. So the model you have, what all does it include, especially as you evolve into a permanent location?
So do you mean like the business model?
Yeah. I mean, like, what kinds of things are you going to want to do beyond sell books?
Sure. So as of right now, my business model is based heavily on events. And when I say events, I mean other aspects than just me standing there with some tables selling books. I do that once in a while. If I have a random Saturday free, I'll do a quick pop-up and maybe discount a bunch of books or something like that. But what really draws people in is having those other aspects. And I'll be the first to admit that books on their own are not a huge profit margin. You're never going to get rich just selling books. So I am more than happy to incorporate other elements into my business, and that's why I do the events. And for the bigger events, I'll provide snacks, and we have a bar available at Kenosha Creative Space. And then it's also operating that book club to kind of keep a consistent cash flow and consistent customers and things like that. And then when I go to launch my full bookstore, I plan to also have a beer, wine, and coffee bar. And again, that's to help with that profit margin. And I just think it's a great idea. Wine and book pairing. Tons of events come to mind. But also to make sure that the location has space for events. Author readings, children's literacy events, all different kinds of community events. I've even seen some stores do like children's birthday parties, things like that. So it does absolutely have to be more than just someone standing behind a counter selling the book. And as I've said, the customer service is kind of the forefront of it. I really want to serve the community.
Good. So you did bring something to read, I believe.
Did.
Would you mind doing that at this time?
Yeah, and then I'll give you kind of a little rundown afterward, because it's definitely going to change the pace of this conversation. Okay.
And this is something you wrote, we should say.
Yes, this is something I wrote, and it is true. It's a short nonfiction snippet. Okay. Why does everyone keep saying she passed away? She died. Just say it. Grandpa Jacquest may be harsh, but you can't say he isn't honest. It's true, though. She died. But that just sounds harsh, doesn't it? It's shocking to hear. I'm sorry, I can't come into work tomorrow. My niece died. How would you react? I'm sorry, I can't come into work tomorrow. My niece passed away. It's easier to respond to. You give a sympathetic, I'm so sorry, please let me know if there's anything I can do. No, there isn't, except don't dock me for missing a day or two of work while I float through life in a comatose state of detachment. It happened during spring break, right before prom, and right around the time of my ACTs. The numbness came a few days later, after the funeral and before my life was supposed to resume as scheduled. I was floating, going to class, listening to my friends, having dinner with my broken family. I was there physically, but not in any other way. Lindsay, my best friend, tried to put me in my place. I don't remember exactly what she said, but after a few weeks of simply complacent interaction, she snapped. She yelled at me that I was a zombie or something of the sort. I knew she was right, but it did nothing to jolt me out of my constant state of indifference. I truly thought this is who I was now. Sure, I cried at the funeral. I even gave a speech, although my mom didn't think it would be a good idea. But I was always skilled with words and speeches, and I wanted to represent my family in a way that none of them could. Me, the youngest of 4 children, the representative of the Jacquests of Kenosha. Everyone complimented me afterward. It made all of them emotional. They were also proud of me, and that's all well and fine, but I didn't do it for them. They just happened to be listening. Returning to school was a nightmare. All my teachers had my brother as a student before me, and some even had my sister. Plus, we have one of the most obvious last names in town. There was no avoiding this. I'm sure my parents offered to let me stay home an extra day or two, but by this point, I was already riding my emotionless train, And if my next stop had to be school, then so be it. The most comforting of condolences came from an unlikely source, my U.S. history teacher. I remember sitting against lockers at school while a friend tried to comfort me when he walked up and demanded to know why I wasn't acting with my usual zest and cheerfulness. I believe his exact words were, "All right, Jacquest, what's going on?" He didn't know, and in that moment, I felt like one day I would be able to move on from this and be a normal person again. I wouldn't have this dark cloud over me that everyone could see and no one wanted to poke too hard for fear of a thunderstorm. It may not have been in that moment, but that brief second gave me comfort that I would be myself again one day.
Very nice.
Thank you.
What prompted you to write that piece?
So this was a true story. My niece passed away my junior year of high school, and I've kind of been wanting to write kind of some thoughts I've had about going through life the way I have ever since then for a long time. And recently, actually a member of my book club, who's also a local author, we read a sort of pamphlet-style book that she wrote. It was just kind of several chapters of her thoughts on different aspects of life, and one of them was grief. And she kind of really inspired me to kind of start to write about my own, which I'd always struggled with talking about. Like a lot of people in my family will do Facebook posts for my niece's birthday and stuff like that, and I always say, don't tag me. I don't want people to know that side of me. I don't want to be involved in that. But Norma Lundstrom, her name is, and she is so lovely, and her writing it kind of really inspired me that this is kind of what I wanted to focus on and kind of finally write about it and talk about it out loud. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
So thank you for letting me share that.
Right, right. Well, as we talked about before the interview, everybody deals with grief differently, and
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's it can be overwhelming in some circumstances. So, we were talking also a little bit before the interview about models you may have, or you know of some. I think you said out there that are similar, maybe not exactly like yours, but similar enough that they might be instructive.
Yeah.
What do you know of? How are you going to incorporate existing models of a business similar to yours in your growth?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest things that I already mentioned is that, books themselves aren't making a whole ton of money. They're still profitable. Physical books are doing very well right now, actually, but it's not gonna make you rich. So one of the biggest things is that I wanted to be more than just a bookseller. And that's where the kind of beer, wine, and coffee bar came in. And I've read a lot of articles about bookstores that have done similar things and how they're doing very well for that reason, is having that other aspect to it. And a lot of the research also did show that people were buying a book and then sitting down with wine, or coming for book club and then you have, the extra wine or beer with it. But that also some people were just treating it as another hangout, which I would absolutely love. Another bar in town to come hang out at, which I think is great. So I'm seeing that these types of businesses are doing very well with having that extra aspect of it. And something that I haven't talked about yet is that the kind of 10-year plan is also to expand into a publishing company, and this crossover is happening a lot with bookstores becoming publishers and publishers becoming bookstores, because you get all these people that are kind of drawn to you, that when you're a bookseller, you get all these writers and they say, would you be willing to put my book in your store? And so you really make that connection in that way. And Kenosha is just brimming with local authors. It's crazy. Like, with starting this business, I've really gotten to meet so many, and there's so much potential in this area, especially with people from bigger cities moving to Kenosha. So it's a great opportunity for that.
Great. That's a good story. That's a good story. So, you mentioned Barnes & Noble, I think earlier, and then you just made a statement that books are selling really well right now. And I don't know in the cyclical nature of the sale of books over a time frame, but generally Barnes & Noble had to revise their corporate strategy because books were trending down, because the digital world is coming on and the ways we learn and read and get information.
Absolutely.
It's all changing. And I'm wondering how you see that going forward in the next, you want to have a physical location maybe in a year or something like that, or maybe next April, I think you might have said to me, and how you see that trending and how you deal with that.
Yes. So The good news for me is that the Main Street community, the downtown USA community, is doing very well right now. People are really appreciating these small independent businesses more than they have pretty much since the recession. People are kind of at a point where they're willing to spend a little bit more money if it means supporting their neighbors, supporting, their friends and things like that, supporting their local business owners. And also with books themselves, the ebooks have kind of gone stagnant and even dropped a little bit. The hype around them has kind of died off a little bit. People are really appreciating physical books as a thing to have, not just to read it, but to display in their home, to keep as a good memory. So it's actually a great time for physical books. However, like I said, Barnes & Noble isn't always doing as well because people are willing to support their local entrepreneurs and local businesses more.
Well, that's good for you.
Yeah, those big chain stores aren't doing as well. We've seen it with Shopko and Payless. The bigger stores are closing. And so Barnes & Noble has actually been experimenting with some of their newer stores, making them look like small independent bookstores, even though it's still a Barnes & Noble, because that's what's doing better. I'm part of an organization called the American Booksellers Association, and more bookstores are opening than they are closing, whereas with Barnes & Noble it's the opposite. More stores are closing than they are opening. So physical books are doing well and small businesses are doing well, so it's a great combination for me.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know that. I thought that trend, but no trend is constant. Usually it's cyclical and
It's always
changes.
going to fluctuate, of course.
Right. So, because I'm one of those people that I want a book. You sent me your piece that you read here in email. I print it out and read it.
Yeah.
I don't want to read it on the email.
Yeah.
I want to read it physically, and so I'm of that ilk. I just wonder if, as the younger people come forward, if we're not going to see more and more of. I think my daughter's always reading on the computer. So,
but you also see it with other things such as records. Record stores are becoming very popular
They've come back.
now. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the nostalgic aspect of it, but it's also that kind of status, you know what I mean, of owning it and owning a record. You're super cool. So yeah, no, it's a great time for this kind of business right now. The bookstores are doing very well, especially the ones, like I said, that have those other aspects to it.
Is there anything more warm in a home than to go into the living room with walls of books?
Yes, exactly.
For me, that's a really big deal.
I completely agree. I love it. Actually, the house I live in now, I didn't really have room to. I rent a house, and I didn't really have room to put out all my books. Makes me very, very sad. My nightstand is very full now because of that. So the next house I live in, it has to have space for my bookshelves.
Understood. So, on a personal note, who are some of your favorite authors? What do you read? Do you spend a lot of, you're very busy, doing a lot of different things.
Yes.
Do you spend a lot of time reading books?
Yes, I do.
And is fiction, nonfiction? How would you characterize what you choose?
So I would say I primarily read fiction, but my genres kind of fluctuate. I really like historical fiction. I like some fantasy as well, but then I also like realistic fiction. I don't think I can't be put in a box. My favorite book of all time is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. It's about World War II Germany, about Germans, but that are not aligned with the Nazis, and it's an amazing book. It's told, actually, the narrator is Death, the angel of death, and he kind of follows this little girl around, and yeah, so it's about that. I actually just listened to the audiobook and it made me cry in my car. So yeah, it's that good. And so yeah, I would say there's no specific genre when it comes to fiction, but I am trying to expand my horizons with nonfiction. And so I've really been hoping the book club will help me expand what I read.
So audiobooks, would you sell those as well?
Yeah, there is actually a resource through this, through these associations that I'm aligned with, that yes, people will be able to eventually purchase that through my website. It's not set up quite yet, but it would be the plan when I launch the full store. I love audiobooks. I have a half-hour commute to and from work, so I love
perfect.
it. Yes,
Perfect.
I love it.
I've never listened to one.
Oh, they're fantastic. Unless you get a
these
bad
days.
narrator, then they're awful. So you have to make sure it's a good narrator. But yes, I do love audiobooks.
Well, that's a good idea. So I'm interested in, so right now with the pop-up, what kinds of people, types of people do you see coming to you? What kind of needs do they have inside that draws them to come to you. And then over time, let's say when you get a permanent location and you have more to offer, how do you see the profile of the people who will be your regular customers?
Well, what's crazy for me is that, so I primarily sell at community events. So I get everyone and anyone. I get all different ages and everything. And so I don't really, right now, I honestly don't have, I have a target market who I know I aim to, but I don't have one specific customer. I have teenagers that come in with their parents. My book club, I think I'm the youngest person in my book club, but there are people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 60s, I think. But that's what's so great is that I try to cater to everyone, which to be honest, I probably should get better about aiming for a target market, but it's so hard for me because I want to accommodate everyone, and I really do get such a variety of customers. And like I said, once I see them like once or twice, I see them a lot, so which is great.
They become your friends.
Yeah, but there's really no one specific type, honestly.
Okay. That's probably something that will evolve for you over time as you get more established.
And one thing that I think is important is that when I do have the store, I will still be doing the pop-ups. I'll still be involved with Kenosha Creative Space because that's just such a great way for me to go out and meet people and draw in customers that wouldn't normally see me.
So we don't have a whole lot more time, but let me, if you'll tell us about the KIVA fundraiser this summer, and is this money critical to your launch?
Yes, so the Kiva fundraiser that I'm going to be launching, basically what that is it's a socially funded loan, actually. So you've heard of Kickstarter and GoFundMe where you donate to a cause, but what Kiva is it's actually a loan. So it's a zero interest loan, and you can fund up to $10,000 through this. And how it works is, say somebody were to donate $50, then for the next 3 years, I would be, I don't know what the number is exactly, but I would be paying them back $1 and change a month. So it is actually a loan, so hopefully that'll encourage people to get involved a little bit more. But that is very critical to my kind of bigger business loan. So I will definitely be making sure that I launch that over the summer when I'm the most exposed and when I'm doing the most events and things like that. And then once that's done, I'll kind of know the status of where I am with my business loan and things like that, and I'll have a little bit more of a firm schedule and date for my opening day.
Okay, great, great. So where would we learn more about your Blue House Books operation?
So Facebook is my primary online presence right now. I am working on a website, but it's not ready quite yet. So it's just facebook.com/BHB Kenosha, or you can just search Blue House Books, and I'm normally that very first result. I have a pretty strong social media presence, so Facebook and Instagram are the main ones. I'm trying to get better at Twitter, but I'm not there yet, but I'm working on it. But definitely Facebook is where I post where I'm having all my events. I do some specials, and I post really cute pictures of my dog.
Great, great. If we had more time, I'd ask you what kind of dog, and we'd have a long conversation.
Oh, we would. That's a whole nother conversation.
Well, thank you very much, Sam, for sharing everything about Blue House Books with us.
Yes, thank you so much, Marshall, for having me.
Good. Again, this is Speaking of Our Words, and it is a production of the Kenosha Writers Guild. Please come to our open meeting held on third Thursday of each month at 6:30 p.m. at Carthage College. The meetings are open to anyone. We welcome your attendance. Please visit our website at KenoshaWritersGuild.com or like our Facebook page, and feel free to leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Until the next video, I'm Marshall Smith. Goodbye.